This is Busted Sleeves with the first video in our Magic Trail series where we're going to gather to discuss general game design, game theory, strategy, less focused on individual deck lists or metagames. We might dive into that from time to time when there's a lot of variety or really exciting format. But more often than not, we're going to take lessons from what's going on in Magic to see what the history's been, where we were, where we're going, and what we can learn to take into future formats as opposed to just focusing on a current metagame for the next week or two. Today's topic is going to talk about general archetype and the designing of archetypes. An important thing to understand with Magic is that R&D and Wizards of the Coast don't design Magic around just designing a couple cards. They're designing around a limited format, and then they're designing standard formats for certain mechanics that are going to be popular, going to be effective, to test new things, and they're really keeping in mind typical archetypes. Your archetypes that you typically see if you're familiar with Magic are your aggro archetypes, which are going to be your mono red, your really aggressive strategies, your mid-range ones, which take care of all the really creature matters, slower, interactive kind of decks, and they've become really popular in recent years, all because of new card design styles. That's for another video. And then you also have your value-driven control decks. These decks focus on some card advantage, a couple multiple for ones, and one for ones with slow threats and interactions. There's, of course, gray and other decks, such as tempo and other things like that, but the real core archetypes are those three. So the discussion point of this video is, can we design a fourth archetype moving forward in formats like Standard and Historic that is healthy, but also shakes up the foundation of the game? The archetype we're looking at, and the one I think we can design, but it's very hard to do so, is Combo. Combo lives and dies by their ability to assemble a couple cards, sometimes really unassuming cards, to do something that within the rules and structures and boundaries of the game would be considered unfair. And you typically will have things like 3, 4, 5, 6 card combos in Standard, but because they're easily interacted with and you have to build multiple pieces to make it work, they're normally just not good enough. Occasionally you will get a combo that slips through, and a lot of times those combos get banned. When looking at combos, it's important to understand that there's really two major types of combo decks within that archetype. You have the redundancy combo deck, and that's like your Storm deck, and it has a critical mass of card advantage, Serum Visions, Peer Through Depths, and things like that, and Opt. And then you also have a bunch of rituals. So the player is going to be playing a bunch of cantrips like Serum Visions and Opt, and you're going to have Metamorphose, and then you're going to have Pyretic and Desperate Ritual, and you're going to have all your rituals go across and all your Serum's Vision go across, and then all of a sudden your opponent just grape shots you for 20 or makes a bunch of 1/1s off and empty the Warrens. Those decks typically have had the most bans in Modern. Some of the first bans in Modern were just Storm, because they're so linearly built, and the reason they exist is because that linear build with no flexibility is efficient. So it gets banned a lot. Your other type of combo deck is your backdoor or oops combo deck. That's the Healy Cat or Splinter Twin Deceiver Exarch. These are decks that are solid, tempo, mid-range, control style decks that also have 8 to 12 cards that when you combine two of them, you just accidentally win. And it forces your opponent to not play the way you should play against combo. Now, against combo, you want to be proactive. You want to have a plan. You want to make sure that they don't have time to assemble their combo. But against the Healy Cat and Splinter Twin, they're interacting with you, forcing you to commit more mana and more board state. Then once you tap out, they just get you. These are the types of decks that typically get bans as well because they just become really prevalent in the format. They're so efficient in what they do, and they're so dangerous in the right hands that they get banned a lot. Players love to play their combo decks, and the question I have for us is, can we design combo decks for Standard and Historic that are fair, or do those belong only in older formats? I believe we can design some fair and balanced combo decks, and I think we have an example we can talk about here. The first thing to know about is when we're looking at combo decks, the way I evaluate them is using an acronym known as PI. And you can use this acronym for a variety of evaluations of decks, but it's really efficient at looking at the strength of a combo deck. In Pi, you have pliability, which is the ability for the deck to bend and move and change its plan. If you interact with me, I can win through this other option. Your Healy Cat and Splinter Twin decks are very pliable. They have the ability to adjust and win as a tempo deck, Bolt, Snap, Bolt, instead of just having to assemble their combo. The impact of the deck is the next piece you want to look at. Your impact is, what is the payoff for assembling the combo? While Storm might not be pliable, because it doesn't have a lot of flexibility to interact with your opponent, it needs a mass of cards, the impact of the combo is so unrelenting and efficient. You can't just counter the Grape Shot, because it's all copied spells. So the impact of the deck is very high. So is it worth running the deck? We need to make sure that when we're designing a balanced combo deck, our pliability and our impact are tempered in a way that allows other archetypes to attack those pieces. And the way that happens is it's all tied together by the E of the PI acronym, which is equity. So that's the cornerstone of designing a fair combo deck. Your equity is how many pieces go into the deck and where do they need to be when you're comboing. Grizzlebrand decks in the past have never been quite the dominant deck in Modern despite their speed of comboing, and that's because you need cards to be in certain positions for the combo to work. Equity also refers to the number of cards in your deck to accomplish a combo. Storm is a very rigid deck because you can only sideboard so much because you need to still enable the storm count, the rituals, and the filtering to combo. So your equity can impact it. Part of the reason the Splinter Twin decks are so dangerous is because their equity is 8 cards and then 52 other cards that keep them alive or win the game another way. In Historic, we have a deck that, as of right now, which I've gone through about 8 different builds of it in the last 5 days climbing through Mythic, it is the Neoform Stormcaller deck, and while it seems on paper and in discussion and in snapshots online to be a very dangerous combo deck, it's actually quite fair in the pie design concept. The reason I say that is because the deck itself combos by assembling Stormcaller and Neoform to pull 4 Dualcaster Mages out of your deck, 4 Mimics copying the Dualcaster Mages out of your deck, a Tuk to give them haste, and potentially a Combat Celebrant so you can attack twice. Because the Neoform, they all come in as 3/3s, so if you're running the Gilded Goose or Paradise Druid version of this deck, you can combo as early as turn 3 to swing for 24, 29 damage, and take second swings if you have a Combat Celebrant in there. So why is the deck fair if you have the ability to combo on turn 3s and 4s? Well, we know the impact is high. The impact of the deck is that you're comboing on turn 3 and 4, and that's great. You have a couple fallback combo options where you can go Gilded Goose plus double Neoform. So you Neoform the Goose once into a Seagate Stormcaller, you Neoform that Seagate Stormcaller into your combo. Or you have a Paradise Druid plus a Neoform plus a Dualcaster in hand, so that once you have 5 mana or 4 lands in the Paradise Druid, you go Neoform stacking Paradise Druid, while it's in the stack, Dualcaster Mage to copy the Neoform, and then you get to combo off. So the deck has a little bit of resiliency there. But the deck only has 4 Neoforms, so you have to run all these card draw spells. So what makes the deck fair if we're comboing on turn 3 sometimes? That comes down to the pliability, and that also comes down to the equity of the deck. In the original version of the deck, it was less streamlined, less linear. You were comboing on turn 4, 5, or 6, and you had these adventure cards to keep you alive. But in the Historic format, just running Bonecrusher Giant and Brazen Bar weren't going to be good enough to win if you didn't combo. More often than not, they weren't good enough. You had to still combo. So the deck now needs to have the combo. You don't have the flexibility. The equity portion of the deck means that you need to run a bunch of cards that stay in the deck. Unlike Splinter Twin, where it's 8 cards, you have 8 cards to pull off the combo ideally, but then you also need 9 cards in your deck, 10 if you have a Combat Celebrant, and if you're drawing those cards, your efficiency as a combo deck goes down. Historically, combo decks get better and better the longer the game goes if your opponent's not putting pressure. If they're afraid to pressure you and they're keeping open interaction, the combo deck is assembling tempo or redundancy of combo pieces to win. But you need your Dualcaster Mages, your Mimics, your Tuk-Tuks in the 60-card deck, not in your hand. So every time you draw a card without knowing what that card is from a scry spell, you run the risk of reducing the efficiency, the potency, the impact of your combo. So I draw a Dualcaster Mage on the first turn. Then I draw a Mimic on the second turn. Now I can only make 6 3/3s. Then I draw another Mimic. Now I can only make 5 3/3s. Now we're starting to get into the realm where our red-black opponents, our white-weenie opponents that are gaining life, are also making board states where they could chump block to survive and then battle back. And because the deck doesn't win off of fabricated value, it wins off of value within the deck, every time it draws a piece, it gets weaker. And then when it combos, if it wasn't a strong enough combo, they have to lean on the ability to attack again. So interaction spells, discard spells, counter spells, those pieces slow the deck down. The ability only to have 4 neoforms means you have to run all these card draw spells. So your ability to combo on turn 3 or 4 really counts on you getting that naturally through the London Mulligan or your card draw advantages. And if instead you're Mulligan to 5 and you end up with a couple lands and a couple of dual caster mages, you can't keep the hand. There's a lot of hands you can't keep because you can't keep too much of the combo that belongs in the deck in your opening hand. There are solutions of this, like Valakut Awakening allows us to put cards from our hand back into our deck, but they are not good enough on their own to guarantee that we're always going to consistently hit it. Because of the impact that every draw step can make our combo worse, our deck's impact decreases due to the equity it takes within our deck. Our deck's pliability is lower because of the equity of our deck. We can only have so many answers within our deck. If we need to go sideboard, now we have to either take out draw spells, which reduces our efficiency, or combo pieces, which reduces our efficiency, so we can bring in interaction. For that reason, I'm really hoping that our R&D team at Wizards is looking at this combo deck, not seeing turn 3 and turn 4 combos as a red flag, but instead looking at the entire balance of the deck. Can we look at this as lessons for how to design combo decks moving forward in the Fire design era to make really engaging content that doesn't warp the game or cause people to be burnt out on the play style? So what do you think? Do you think that we can have a distinct 4th archetype in Standard and Historic and Pioneer? Or do you think that combo decks like that belong in Legacy, Modern, and Vintage? Do you have any examples of fair combo decks that you think shouldn't be banned or haven't been banned but are still playable in older formats? As always, thank you for hanging out with me. Make sure to find me on Twitter and Twitch at Busted Sleeves. That's where I'll be streaming decks I play and test. That's also on Twitter where I may be posting deck lists, format reviews, and new cards coming out, evaluating new sets and new formats. If you have any topics that you want to see discussed, such as how to balance the Fire design era without abandoning the design concept of Fire, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see future ones, hit that subscribe button so you can see every time I drop a new video. And thank you very much for coming to hang out.